Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. Week 1 officially in the books. It's crazy to think we look forward to this all season, the best time of the year for sports fans when football rolls around. And just like that, in the blink of an eye, Week 1 is already gone. So now we shift our focus on to Week 2, and there's a lot of storylines to touch on. We had some exciting action that took place this past Friday night as the football season kicked off in Shelby County. So a lot that we're going to break down, look back at. Also a lot that we're going to look ahead to. This is the final week before region play gets underway, and so teams really need to be clicking on all cylinders once this week comes to a close. So we're going to talk about that, talk about what some teams need to do heading into Week 2 of the season. At the end of the show, as always, we're going to break down, talk about our SCR Stars of the Week, all the players that caught my attention and really stood out in Week 1 of high school football in Shelby County. But right now we're out here at Shelby County High School. Our game of the week is going to take place between the Shelby County Wildcats and Montevallo Bulldogs right here on this very field. So that's going to be the first game we look at with our game of the week out here at Shelby County High School. So like I said, our game of the week is going to be between the Shelby County Wildcats and the Montevallo Bulldogs, hence why we're out here at Shelby County High School. This is an important matchup, not only for momentum for these two teams. If Montevallo wins, they will have started the season 2-0 after a win against Marbury last week. They won that one 36-27. Shelby County, on the other hand, reeling a little bit after their opening loss last week, last Friday night. They went to Childersburg, lost the game 13-0, but really a game that was close down to the wire in the third quarter. They held them through 3 quarters to just 7 points, which is really the best defense that head coach Heath Childers has seen in his tenure here at Shelby County. So each team saw some positives in that first game of the season. Shelby County went on to lose 13-0, so not the start they wanted. They have a chance to get some momentum back this week as they take on a 4A Montevallo team, so they'll have that classification advantage. Montevallo, on the other hand, last week they showed they could win a game against a 5A team when they took down Marbury, and that was a game that was close throughout, but at the end of the day, they made the plays there at the end of the football game to win that game. Late touchdown pass from Malik and Bennett to J.J. Evans. Those two had a strong connection all game long. Malik and Bennett ended the game with 227 passing yards, 3 total touchdowns in that game, and Evans ended the night with 109 receiving yards. So their offense obviously clicking right now, made that late touchdown, only up by 1 point at that point in the fourth quarter, make that touchdown pass, and go on to put the final nail in the coffin to win that game. So their offense clicking. Now they'll be taking on a Shelby County defense that's really, they looked awesome in that first game of the season. To hold Childersburg to 7 points through 3 quarters of action is something, that's something that head coach Heath Childers has talked about the last 2 years going into the season, is that they need to fix up the defense and this team will be better and better. But he expected the offense to be a lot better than it was last Friday night. So that should give the offense confidence to know that they now have a defense that they can lean on if they need to, but they're going to have to score points. We saw it the other night that Montevallo showed they could make those plays late in the game to win a football game. And I think that that's something that Shelby County's got to have on their mind. They're going to need to score some points because this Montevallo offense has a lot of talent, a lot of playmakers, and a lot of explosiveness. So Shelby County, despite having a good defense and having that classification advantage, they're going to be able to keep this Montevallo offense at bay for a little while, but it's too talented to keep them in check the whole game. They're going to have to score points if they want to win this football game. But a little history here. This is a big-time matchup rivalry-wise that goes back for a long time. The two teams have met 68 times. Crazy, though, they haven't met on the football field since 2003. So it's a renewal of a rivalry, a local county rivalry, with these two teams not separated by much of Shelby County at all. So it should be a lot of fun, a great atmosphere out here on Friday night at Shelby County High School, and that's why this is our game of the week. So now, as we do on every week's show, we're going to go classification by classification, break down all the county matchups that we have going on this Friday night as we hit Week 2 of the Shelby County High School football season. And first, before I touch on the Thompson game this Friday night, that's going to be the next game we talk about. I want to talk a little bit about Oak Mountain. They don't have a game. They're on bye this week, so I wanted to mention freshman Evan Smith's name. We're going to talk about him more at the end of the show in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. Obviously, the freshman went out there in his first varsity start, put up 4 touchdowns, had 200-plus all-purpose yards, and it was just an unbelievable performance, a gutsy performance against a Chelsea squad. They get a 42-9 victory to open the season. So we'll talk a little bit about him a little later on. Oak Mountain's defense also looked really impressive in that game. So this is a solid Oak Mountain team. It's going to have a tough stretch that features Hewitt, Trussville, Hoover, and Thompson in their next 3 games. So they're going to have a bye week to sure up that they're ready for that tough 3-week stretch against 3 teams that are in the top 50 nationally. But now we'll talk about one of those opponents that they're going to take on a little later on. That's going to be the Thompson Warriors. A big way to open the season this past Friday night as they played in the Champions Challenge down in Montgomery, took on James Clemens, win that game 38-7, and really the first half is all you needed to know. Both the offense and the defense showed up in that win. Talia Tungavaloa, of course, back again, threw for 380 yards, 4 touchdowns in the game. The majority of that in the first half of action, 300-plus yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half. And then the rest of it, the first drive of the second half. So picking up right where he left off last year, the important thing there is that he was able to find receiver Michael Petway, a new go-to guy, losing both Ahmad and Mo Edwards off of last year's team. That's close to 3,000 receiving yards, the state record holder in receptions in Ahmad Edwards. So that's a lot of replacement, a lot of production to replace for Thompson. Michael Petway stepped up this week. He had 110 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving from Tungavaloa. So an awesome thing to see if you're a Thompson Warriors fan, that they had a receiver step up, and he's going to be that go-to guy, that downfield threat for Thompson and Tungavaloa this year. Kyle Smoke also stepped up. A.J. Bonham, a nice laying out grab there for Thompson. So he's got some receivers to throw to this year. They just got to keep progressing each week as we move along. This week, they're going to be taking on a Foley team that loses 37-0 to Prattville in that first game. And while this may be an easy matchup on paper, Thompson's going to be the clear favorite in this game. They've got to make sure they are clicking on all cylinders going into the week after. They can't get caught looking ahead. They need to focus on this week and make sure that they have everything going the way that they need it to be going as they take on Hoover the week after, which is going to be one of the toughest teams they play all year, if not the toughest. Hoover looked really good in their opening win against Pinson Valley this past Saturday on ESPN. So Thompson's really going to have to shore some things up, make sure they're clicking on all cylinders. I know that Freeman, head coach Mark Freeman, was extremely excited from what he saw with the defense, only giving up 7 points after losing their top 4 players on that side of the ball and close to 400 tackles on that side of the ball. That being said, they give up a score right at the halftime break, right before half. They give up 7 points, or else this game would have been a shutout. So you know he wants to make sure that they take that extra step, that they don't give up that late score. So there's some things they're going to work on, but overall you have to be extremely impressed with what Thompson was able to do in that opening game. Going to have a target on their back all year. And for them to come out and play the way they did was just really impressive. But I expect them to play hard and be coached hard this week, knowing that they don't need to get caught looking ahead, knowing that they need to fix some things. And I expect another big win from Thompson on Friday night against Foley. So the only other 7A game that we have to talk about this week, that's going to be Spain Park traveling to Bessemer City on Friday night as they look to start the season 2-0 and get some momentum heading into region play as well. And this was a great performance by Spain Park. The 24-14 final really doesn't represent what that game was against Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, a very, very talented 6A team that challenged Thompson and Oak Mountain last year, made it to the semifinals of the 6A playoffs. This was a good Hillcrest team. Spain Park came out, went up 17-0, and really dominated the game throughout. A couple of late scores by Hillcrest came on a kick return and a trick play. That's how they got their 14 points. But overall, Spain Park, the much better team in this game against a very talented Hillcrest team that resides in the 6A classification. And it really starts with Jalen Henderson in the backfield. He's taking over. This is his first year as the #1 running back on that team. Came out, had 172 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground in the backfield. So an unbelievable start to his senior season there at Spain Park. Mason Pronk taking over at quarterback also had a solid first game as the starter there for Spain Park as well. He ran for, I believe, around 60 yards, ran for a touchdown, also threw for about 108 yards in that game. So a nice start for the offense. They're going to ask for some receivers to step up a little bit more. I have a feeling they do want to have a little bit more of an air attack moving forward, despite being a team that does like to run that pro-style offense and run the ball a lot. And they'll be able to do that this season because of the defense they have. Head coach Sean Rainey coming into the season extremely high on the defense. I've harped on that several times, something that he wasn't as high on last year. This year he's extremely excited about that group. And really should have had a shutout in that game against Hillcrest. And so, you got guys like Cedric Tucson, Matthew Moats, Josh Wallace, Dre Robinson. All those guys had big games on the defensive side of the ball, as well as many more. So if their depth's there, they're going to have a great season because their starters across the board are unbelievable and some of the best in the state on the defensive side of the ball. So this week, like I said, they're traveling to Bessemer City. Bessemer City coming off a slim 21-14 win against a 7A Huffman team. But that being said, Huffman's normally not the best when it comes to football, so not the most telling win for Bessemer City last week. It's the second 6A team that Spain Park will take on in a row. And while they should be a heavy favorite, they should win this game going away late. This is I'm sure that head coach Sean Rainey wants to finish the game stronger than his team did against Hillcrest. But this is a game where they have to, like Thompson, they need to finish and finalize some things. They have an important 2-week stretch after this against Vestavia Hills and Mountain Brook. Both must-win games if this Spain Park team wants to make the playoffs, with their toughest games still ahead in Thompson, Hewitt, and Hoover, and I think Oak Mountain as well. So this is an important game for Spain Park to gain some momentum moving into region play. So our first 6A game that we're going to talk about will feature also a 5A team from the county. That's going to be Chelsea taking on Briarwood this Friday night. A big game for both teams. Briarwood looking to get off to a 1-0 start, continue that success they saw last year when they went 14-1, made it all the way to the state championship before they picked up a loss. Chelsea, however, looking for a big bounce-back win after the struggle against Oak Mountain last Friday night. Lose that game 42-9 and really just never got anything going on the offensive side of the ball. 2 of their 9 points came on a bad snap from Oak Mountain over the punter's head and out of the end zone. The other, a nice touchdown pass to Andrew Barlewski for about a 30-yard pass there and 30-yard catch that put them on the board late in that game. But the defense struggled with a freshman quarterback in Evan Smith, who's extremely talented, but they needed to be more physical, more presence in the backfield. They didn't have it. The offensive side of the ball just wasn't able to move, and credit Oak Mountain's defense for that. They were physical and in the backfield all night. So I expect Chelsea to have a big week of practice here, come back, show some different things, open up the playbook maybe a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball. I do expect them to look better in Week 2 than they did in Week 1, but this is a Briarwood team coming off a 13-0 loss in a jamboree game to Vestavia that showed their defense is still going to be there this year. I think this is going to be a talented Briarwood team specifically on that side of the ball. Despite only giving up 10.6 points per game last year, I think this year's defense could be just as good or better. The offense is going to rely on J.R. Tranrino at the quarterback position, Luke Pruitt at running back. If Tranrino is able to have a nice transition from running back to quarterback, making that transition this year, if he's able to do that smoothly, open up the playbook, throw the ball around, this could be a very talented Briarwood, but I'm interested to see how that unfolds this Friday night, because if he's good at the quarterback position and this offense is able to score points, it's going to be tough to score against their physical defense that we've come to know over the years. So it's going to be an important game momentum-wise for both teams as they look to do some different things, but I expect another big knockout, drag-out kind of game. It's one that was close last year, I believe a 19-7 game between these two last year. So I do expect Briarwood's defense to hold Chelsea's offense in check for a while, but I need to see Briarwood's offense prove that they can score some points this year. So if I had a trophy to give out for Team of the Week, one of them would go to Oak Mountain. They had an unbelievable performance. The other would go to the Pelham Panthers. What a comeback. What a dominant 3 quarters they played to pick up a win against the Calera Eagles. Trailed that game 21-7 and outscored Calera 38-3 the rest of the way over the final 3 quarters. They trailed 21-7 at the end of the first quarter, and you were a little worried if you were a Pelham fan because things were not looking good. Trailing by that much at the end of one quarter, you didn't know what to expect from your defense moving forward. They turned up the pressure, and they answered the call. The offense, obviously talented this year, was also able to step up and do some important and big things there as well. So they outscored Calera 38-3 over those final 3 quarters. End up winning that game 45-24. So really shores up my belief in everything that Pelham is capable of doing this year. If their defense plays that good like they did over those last 3 quarters the rest of the year, this is that Pelham team that can compete for not only their region championship in 6A, but can also compete for a 6A state championship. So like the other 2 teams we've just talked about, Thompson and Spain Park, this is really a must-win game as far as momentum goes moving into region play, because their most important game of the season takes place the week after this as they take on Homewood on the road. So this will be the second of 3 straight road games that Pelham's going to start the season with. Obviously a good go of it in the first game against Calera. So now they're going to be taking on a Bibb County team on the road this Friday night. Bibb County's a 5A team that's coming off a 41-0 win. That 41-0 win, however, was against a 4A Greensboro team. This is a game where, because of that, you saw that Bibb County looked good, but you don't really know what to expect against a team that's of a higher classification like Pelham. So it'll be important for Pelham to come out, carry that momentum over from last week, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're so talented on offense that if that defense comes out as stout as it was those final 3 quarters, then Pelham's going to win this game going away. I think they're that talented on the offensive side of the ball. So it should be an interesting matchup, but like I said, a chance for them to gain some more momentum. But a big key to last week's game was Matthew Rye came into that game. He's been battling with Xavier Langford for the quarterback spot. Both of those talented quarterbacks. I still expect to see both in this game against Bibb County too, but Langford struggled a little bit early on, still has all the talent in the world and needs to gain some more confidence, but I think he can be a good guy moving forward. But Rye came in 8 of 11 for 87 yards through the air. Also another strong game on the ground for him, as we're accustomed to seeing throughout last year as well. But the big guy, Brandon Sledge, and when I say big, he's really not the biggest guy on the field, but he went out there, had a dominant game, 104 yards rushing, and also 36 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns total in that game as well. So Brandon Sledge, a strong game. Patrick Durr, Ryan Jewell, both 6 tackles on defense, and Phillip Duke and Cameron Carr both had a couple of interceptions, combined for 3 interceptions in that game. So the defense stepped up late. That was key. The offense obviously clicked and rolled throughout the game. That's key. They need to do both moving forward into this game as they move into that first region matchup with Homewood a week from this Friday. So the other end of that Calera-Pelham game was the Calera Eagles. Obviously not the start they wanted, but they did show some promise. There's going to be some positives that I talk about here. They jump out to a 21-7 lead in the first quarter. That's something that they have to take away as a positive, something that they need to build off of moving forward and really continue that kind of play throughout the game. It's a team with obviously as much talent as anybody in the county, a team that can put up loads and loads of points on the offensive side of the ball. Depth is just the concern there, and that showed off. They're having guys playing on both sides of the ball, especially on the offensive and defensive line, which is going to become exhausting. So as they move forward into the season, they're going to have some younger guys step up, show that they can add that depth, and that's going to be key. This week, they're taking on a Pell City team that they can beat. It's a Pell City team that won 21-17 against Fort Payne in the first week of the season. But I don't think Pell City's nearly as good as Pelham. I think this is a big chance for Calera to bounce back. And like we've talked about all show long, they need to do so. They have Wetumpka waiting in the wings the following week. They have a tough region schedule ahead. So this is a big chance for them to gain some momentum, show some positive signs moving into those important region games. And without Cornelius Brown, obviously one of the most talented quarterbacks in the county, had a solid game. Without his interceptions, this would have been a very close game against Pelham. But he threw for 363 yards. His completion percentage not the highest, 26 of 50 in that game. But he and Quindarius Cruz, who I am extremely high on, I talk about this guy all the time, a talented athlete, not just on the football field, but an athlete overall. And Quindarius had 126 yards receiving on just 6 catches. So obviously a talented guy, just a junior there at Calera. Those two guys, obviously a great combination, and several other receivers are still there at Calera as well, guys that were able to receive for 530-plus yards last year. So this is going to be a strong Calera offense moving forward. They need to get that depth shored up. They need to do that so that their defense can be a little bit more rested and obviously make some stops throughout the game. Jason Jones, #1 defensive tackle #1 player in the state next year for the class of 2020. He's going to have to step up, be a big guy on the defensive line. Had a solid first game, but he's also playing on the offensive line. Trenton Yao, a great defensive back there at Calera. Many other guys. They have a lot of talent on that defense. They just need to play hard, need to keep their stamina up, and that's going to be the key. But I do think that they're going to be able to bounce back on Friday night with a big win against Pell City. So it wasn't all bad in Helena's 35-13 loss to McAdory to open the Richie Busby era. There were some positives for this Helena Huskies team to take away. Hopefully they do that when they watch film this week, when they practice. It's a team that can take some confidence-building things moving forward. I know that Busby says they're trying to build something, build that belief system that they can actually win football games. And this is a good week for them to start that belief. McAdory was a team that obviously had a good defense a year ago. Not the best record because their offense struggled, but they had a solid defense coming into this year, so you knew it was going to be tough for Helena to score. Lose that game 35-13, but it was a close game for 3/4 of that contest. Trailing at the half 21-7. It could have been a 14-14 football game. They're trailing 21-7. They come out, score early in the third quarter, make it a 21-13 game in the second half, and that's really all you could ask for. You had a chance in the second half. Obviously, it didn't unfold the way they wanted to, as McAdory went on to put up some points there late in that second half, but it's a way to take away some positives to be in a game in the second half to start the season. So build that moving forward. The defense played good for almost 3/4. The offense showed that it could score early in that second half to make it a game. So now they're taking on a Hueytown team this Friday night that's actually a really good football team despite coming off an opening 18-7 loss. That was against Homewood. Homewood, a very solid team on both sides of the ball. They're fundamentally sound on offense and defense. So that was not a bad loss for Hueytown. That being said, Helena should take some confidence away from that game simply because of the fact that Hueytown was only able to put up 7 points on the offensive side of the ball. If Helena will go into the tape room, will go into practice with a physical, hard-nosed nature, come out in that game, first home game under Richie Busby, come out in that game, play as physical as they can possibly play, get after the offensive playmakers on Hueytown's team, this could be a football game. I think they're going to have a chance to compete in it yet again like they did last week if they come out, if they get that belief going in the right direction. But I do believe that this Helena team will come out with a good attitude, come out strong and physical in this game, knowing that they could disrupt Hueytown's offense and be in this game. So we'll see how it goes in week 2 under head coach Richie Busby, but I do think this Helena team is going to progress moving forward throughout the season. So it wasn't the start that Lucas Weatherford or the Vincent Yellowjackets wanted in week 1 as they fell to White Plains 49-18. Obviously a rough go of things. That being said, it was a close game in the third quarter, 20-12 lead for White Plains with 9:20 left to play in that third quarter, and that's when White Plains rattled off 16 points in about a 5-minute stretch and really put it out of reach as Vincent couldn't really ever get their offense going in that contest. So that they can take away that positive like Helena can, that it was a close game there early in the second half. So, things could have been a lot different for the opener, but it's going to come down to depth. They were taking on a 4A team, a bigger roster, a lot more depth. This week they have that opportunity to be a classification higher as they take on Holy Spirit, a road game, but it's a 1A Holy Spirit team. I will say Holy Spirit's coming off a 55-0 win against Autauga, which showed that they have some offense they can put up, but Vincent's going to have the bigger roster. They're going to have the size. They're going to have advantages across the board on paper, so now it's just taking that and putting it on the field as well. I think this is a team that really only broke the surface last week. They didn't show a lot of what they're capable of with a returning quarterback in Dusty Davis, returning running back in Chris Hardy, who was held under 100 yards, and a defense that's returning as well. So there's some positives. They didn't play their best, and we're still in that game in the second half. This week I expect them to shore some things up. I expect them to play extremely good and possibly bounce back with a win. I want to see it to believe it first. Like I said last year, I believe this was a team that could make the playoffs last year. I still think they can do that this year. They have all of that still on their list moving forward with region play still ahead, but they definitely need to show some progress, make us believe again. They need to show up this Friday night, play like that team that won several games in a row last year, and play with that desire and hunger. If they do so, they're going to bounce back. If they hang their heads, then they're going to fall again and fall to 0-2. But I do think this is a team that really wants to win and wants to make the playoffs again and put Vincent back on the map moving forward. So our final list of games that we're going to talk about today, that's going to be the AISA and ACSC games that we have taking place this Friday night. And we're going to start with Kingwood. They'll be taking on Coosa Valley. A monster start for Kingwood this season, 2-0, coming off a big win against the Evangel Lightning, and Evangel coming off that ACSC state championship a year ago. Obviously one of the best teams in the state at the 8-man level, but they also play really well in these 11-man games. So for Kingwood to start 2-0 with that 28-6 win against Evangel, a big start for them last week, or a big second win for them last week. Coosa Valley picks up their first win as well. They hold on for a 22-17 victory to get that first win under head coach Jamie Scruggs. Now 1-1 on the season for them. I think Kingwood's really good. They're playing with a lot of momentum. Coosa Valley still trying to get some momentum. Obviously, that win helps. We'll see how it goes this week. I think Kingwood has a slight advantage, but this Coosa Valley team has barely scratched the surface so far this year, so that should be a fantastic in-county local game to watch this Friday night. Evangel will try to bounce back from that 28-6 win to Coosa Valley as they take on Lowndes Academy this Friday night, sitting at 1-1. So Cornerstone also a loss this past Friday night. They fall to 1-1, lose that game 42-10 to Springwood. Now they're going to take on Crenshaw Academy, looking to improve above 500, get back to 2-1 on the season. So that'll be an important game for Cornerstone as far as momentum goes. And then Hope Christian, they also lost. They fell to 1-2 on the season, lost a tough one to Tabernacle this past Friday night. And so now they move forward. They're going to be taking on Victory Christian out of Mississippi. But it should be a strong slate across the board. All of our teams should have chances to win if they picked up a loss last week, to bounce back with a win this week. And the game of the week in the AISA and ACSC among those teams is going to be Kingwood and Coosa Valley. That one should be a lot of fun to watch. So our final segment of the show, and my favorite one, I'm so excited to be doing this again this year, that's going to be our SCR Stars of the Week segment, where we talk about the best performances throughout the season. And we're going to start week 1 performances. Obviously a lot of things that stood out, but nothing more important to me than Evan Smith's performance there at Oak Mountain. As I said, 202 all-purpose yards, led the team in rushing, led the team in passing, also accounted for 4 touchdowns, 3 of which came in the second quarter. That 4th came in the third quarter. So an awesome start to the season for Evan Smith there on the Oak Mountain offensive side of the ball. I predicted that he would be the starter there over Luke Purser so they could get both of those playmakers in the game. That held true. It was awesome to see, if you're an Oak Mountain fan, that offense kind of take that step forward, because they have a gauntlet ahead with Hoover, Hewitt, and Thompson on the schedule, and that was a huge momentum boost. And while he's a freshman and going to make mistakes throughout the season, that's a positive that they're able to take away moving forward as they look for another 3-0 start to the season this year as well. It's going to be a tough one to do with that schedule, but either way, winnable games on the back half, and that gauntlet will help Smith grow as a player. So obviously his confidence is high after game 1. And of course at Thompson, Talia Tungavaloa, he's back, threw for close to 400 yards, almost all of which came in the first half of that game. Also added 4 touchdowns passing as well for Thompson. So unbelievable start to the year for him. And if he plays a full game in that game, he's going to throw for close to 600 yards. So unbelievable for him. But more importantly, he's able to connect with Michael Petway, have another go-to receiver like he did with Ahmad and Mo Edwards last year. He'll still need other guys to step up. We saw a little bit from A.J. Bonham and Kyle Smoke and a few others. But with Michael Petway receiving for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, obviously a good start for them, something that they needed to get some momentum on the offensive side of the ball when you've got guys like Shadrick Bird in the backfield who also had a strong game, and you've got an offensive line like they do. This offense is going to be one of the best in the state. Pair it with the defense, obviously that's another SCR star that we're going to talk about there real quick. The defense only gives up 7 points, a really late score right at the halftime buzzer, and that makes that the only score in the game, but impressive enough for a defense that lost almost all of its talent from last year's team. Will Connor stepped up, had a big game, and a few others as well. So good to see the Thompson defense showing that they're going to be there and a force to be reckoned with again this year. Moving over to Spain Park, our SCR Star of the Week from the Spain Park Jaguars, Jalen Henderson, a strong performance from him, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. That's a big-time performance from him to start the season. Carried the Jags really to a victory in that game. The defense played well. Mason Pronk played well, but his performance was unbelievable as he just pummeled through guys on the defensive side of the ball. So great start for you, Jalen. Moving on to 6A, Brandon Sledge, Pelham. Awesome start for you two as well. 104 rushing yards, also had 36 receiving yards, a couple of touchdowns there for the Pelham Panthers in that big comeback win where they really just dominated for the final 3 quarters of that game to take down Calera 45-24. So a good start for Pelham, good start for Brandon Sledge, some other guys on that Pelham team as well. They are going to be a real force this year in the 6A classification. Defense was also a positive. I said that they needed to be good this year if this team was going to be as good as they needed to be, and for them to lead or to hold Calera to 3 points over the final 3 quarters, obviously a big-time factor in that comeback and something they needed to carry moving forward. And I'm going to talk about the losing end a little bit of that game as well. You know, you don't want to bring attention to the fact that they could have been better, but these guys could have played better, and they know they could have played better. But it's going to start with Cornelius Brown at quarterback for Calera, a guy threw for 360 yards. You can't ask him to do much more on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously had a few interceptions there in that game, something he's going to have to fix moving forward. But he's going to gain confidence. He showed that he can compete against a tough 6A team, which he's going to need to do throughout the year. So not the exact start he wanted, but obviously some positives to take away. And then you can also look at Quindarius Cruz, his go-to target, 100-plus receiving yards, a dominant game. Just on 6 receptions as well, 126 total yards on 6 receptions. Unbelievable start for him. And Tyler Agnew, this is something I wanted to bring up in the Calera segment that I forgot to. He's a guy, carried the ball 11 times for 95 yards. When you've got your quarterback throwing 50 times and your running back running 11 times and he puts up 95 yards, you may want to use him a little bit more this next Friday night's game against Pell City. They need to be a little bit more balanced, and that's going to open things up even more for Brown, too, to help him have a better game. Rather than know that he's going to throw the ball, which leads to those interceptions. So if they're a little bit more balanced, use Agnew again a little bit more. With as talented as he is, putting up 95 yards on just 11 carries, that could be a positive moving forward as well. So those are some positives that Calera can take away as they look to bounce back with a win against Pell City on Friday night. The last 2 SCR Stars of the week that we're going to talk about, both at Montevallo, both had awesome offensive games, and it's going to start with quarterback Malik Bennett. Showed why he was the named the starting quarterback over 2 returners that split the season last year. Bennett had 227 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns in that win for Montevallo against Marbury. A classification up win, too, so a big win for them. His go-to target, J.J. Evans, awesome game for him, 109 yards receiving and scored as well in that game. So awesome start for the Montevallo Bulldogs as they were able to show some offensive production with a lot of the talent that they have back on this year's team. I expect that moving forward as they take part in our game of the week here at Shelby County on Friday night. But that being said, that's going to do it for now. We're out here at Shelby County High School. It's going to be another fun week of action. We'll have all the great coverage. If you haven't gotten your football magazine yet, let me know. Shoot me an email. We'll make sure you get a copy of this year's football magazine as well. So be ready. Get out to the games this Friday night. There's going to be a lot of action to partake in, to view as we hit the second week of high school football in Shelby County. But for now, that's going to do it here from Shelby County High School.